Gameforge's In the Hunt, Season 4. Retooled, rearmed with more knowledge to help you reach your performance goals and your next level. In the Hunt members, mount up. It's time for the hunt. Welcome In the Hunt members. This is Brian Bailey here bringing you a new live on location In the Hunt in Dublin, Ireland. We are here with, as always, Mark Sweeney, and yes, he might look a little different on camera this week. Funny story, we'll talk about that later. And as well as our host, Gareth McShay. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Brian, welcome, and can I just say thank you for once again bringing the sunshine to Ireland. Brian has an amazing record. Every time he's been in Ireland, we're talking 70, 75 degrees, balmy, and Brian starts to struggle to think that we ever get any rain, but as I do say, we have a little green country for a reason. That's mainly water falling from the sky. So you're very welcome, gentlemen. Great to see you both back in Dublin, and it's been a great week, right, and some exciting new developments as always.
Mark?
Yeah, great to be here as always. I'm in the group now, so they can't be chirping on me too hard. Since we're all together. Well, actually, probably not true. You probably will anyway.
Yes,
but that's all right. We're good.
Chirping sign of infection. So we just spent a couple days in Denmark, and so today's podcast is just going to be a couple questions that we've gotten over the last couple days, weeks, and we'll just kind of a potpourri or a hodgepodge of questions. So what question or two did you find from Denmark, Mark, where you thought was interesting we need to comment on?
Oh, but I found there was a few interesting questions. I think we were there for a coaching conference, so most of the questions were about coaching, not about playing or actual technique, I think. But I think the most interesting question that some of the coaches brought up is just how do they become coaches of higher level players? In other words, so the majority of PGA coaches or golf coaches in the world are teaching juniors, amateurs, club players, and then you've got a certain amount that teach tour level players, and quite a few ask, how do I get to that level? Right, and that comes up kind of year after year, or people for some reason think it's glamorous to be on tour coaching, which I actually don't think it is. And people I've known who've done it for years, say that's the last thing in the world you actually want to do because it's a huge sink of your time, and it's just hard. It's just a hard life, and you're expected to be out there a lot. But so that question came up, and what would your answer be to that, Brian?
For tour coach?
Yeah,
I think it's very simple. Take bad players and make them really good, and you become a tour coach.
Some point.
At some point. Well, I don't think there's a magic recipe. Like everyone thinks that to be a tour coach, it's some spectacular achievement. I think a lot of times it's just putting in the hard work. Being available is big. If you go to any event, there's always a bunch of young lads with boxes of high technology just hoping to get pointed out in the crowd to become the next, tour coach. But I think, if you put in the effort, you build a reputation, you actually get players better, which is unique. A lot of high-end coaches don't always tend to get players better. If you can get players better, it'll be amazing on how many players will actually come and seek you out, and then you become a tour coach. I work with, high-end college players that turn into tour players, and that's I do get referrals every once in a while, but the majority of my tour players are usually college, work hard, need help for that next step, and that's where I usually get involved and then get them to a certain level and look forward to them branching off and finding a new guru that I don't have to deal with the psychoticness of actual touring pros.
A new guru.
A new guru. How about yourself, Gareth? What do you think on that subject matter?
I would say, Brian, that we would see a lot of coaches who move players' data in terms of those technological instruments you were referring to there a moment ago, but we don't see a lot of tour players' performances moving whilst engaged with a coach. And I think if you're going to be retained and successful as a tour coach, then you better be assisting the players to better performances. That's our job, is to assist any level of player to an enhanced performance level, and that won't necessarily mean it will be substantiated by, as I say, technological data. It's more so, are they performing in the arena to the level that they desire, or perhaps to a new level that they haven't previously been able to access. I would also say that if you haven't worked with a player from their first day in golf, you haven't got them on tour. They have got there via a multitude of channels, most likely, and several coaches. And oftentimes, I think coaches try to dump on a new player just to prove that they have value to add, and that can do a lot more harm than good. And I think as we work with elite players, often we're trying to give the player access to resources they've already established but have forgotten how to access themselves, or perhaps there's confusion, they need clarity. We're many times removing the dark glasses and letting them see the light, as opposed to trying to suddenly create this new skill. If the player's that good already, then you're not going to be able to generate massive increase in skill level, so you've got to be able to give them access to the skills that they actually have. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think when you start working with tour players, it's because you were referred by somebody, either by another coach who's not like as a putting coach. I can be referred by full swing coaches or by other players, and I look at it kind of as Monday qualifying, where you've got one chance to get it right. If you don't get it right, it might be a while before you get to Monday qualify again, right? So you have to be prepared. If you get a very high level player, they generally do not want you to sit there and revamp their whole game. That's definitely not what they want. They tend to be risk averse. They tend to have a very specific question or a very specific issue that they're trying to improve, and you have to focus only on that in the simplest possible terms and get them showing immediate improvement.
Yeah.
Not you'll be better in 6 months, but they better be better within 20 minutes of you sitting with them and working with them. Otherwise, they just lose interest and they're gone. So you kind of have to be ready for that. And most coaches we talk about all the time, they get higher level players and they just want to unload information on them about how smart they are and how much they know. And that is generally, in my opinion, not an effective strategy. And I probably used to do that in the very beginning, and it did not work very well at all. But luckily, I had full swing coaches who were recommending me for green reading for tour players. And you've got to boil it down to real simple things that they can go out and use immediately and get immediately better.
Yeah, and I think, again, that goes back to that initial question, how to be a tour player. I think the majority of time for getting elite players to come see you, it is a referral system. It is other coaches. And I give hats off to the coaches that have the strength and the understanding of their own abilities, that they don't mind a third party coming in that might bring a different value or different information. I think a lot of times in this wonderful industry we call golf, is we tend to hoard, we tend to shelter, and we tend to not like outside voices. We want to control everything. So the coaches that I think that are truly tour coaches, they are willing to give away some of that control to bring in other voices that will help that player achieve what they need to accomplish to kind of change that performance. I don't think there's any coach that can do everything. This game is too complex, and there's too many moving parts to do everything. So I think, again, the coaches that can find other coaches that they trust and believe in and have shown getting players better, that is a great way to become a tour coach. So how do you do that? Expand your coaching base, find those circles of coaches that will bring you insight as well as possible referrals in the future. So again, for me as a coach, it's just hanging out and learning from other coaches and showing them what you know, and then that kind of bridges out from that. So going back to our original question, what makes a tour coach? It's really a referral, and like every business on earth, it's who you know more so than what you know. A lot of times. I know Gareth is seething over here, and he actually takes notes, the only proper lad at the table. The rest of us, we're just winging it, so we'll defer to Gareth again.
I take notes because by the time Brian's finished talking, I've forgotten what we're talking about.
Fair enough. You got to get to 30 minutes somehow.
No, Brian, I completely agree. I completely agree with that idea of other coaches, bringing in coaches. It's actually a signal of strength and belief in your own abilities when you're prepared to call upon somebody that you know has more knowledge in a certain area or a different perspective in a certain area, and you believe that will be of benefit to your player. And I think when somebody talks to me about working with elite players or tour coaches, it's a little bit of an alarm bell, because I can tell the coach is thinking more about what it will mean for them versus what it means for the players they'll be working with. It's more about, oh, look at me, I'm going to be front and center and hit the front page of Golf Whatever magazine. As coaches, we're never the star of the show. We're always going to be in the background. We're helping prepare the star of the show, and hopefully we will be able to do stuff that is relevant and assist those players in hitting their performance levels. But we're not supposed to be the star. We're always going to be in the background. And I think that's an important thing for anybody who's aspirations to getting on tour and being a coach, to remember that you are one bad swing, one bad putt, one bad game away from being sacked. And if you place a lot of your ego in being the star of the show and being that tour coach, and then you get sacked, that's not going to leave you in a very good place anyway. So just something to consider for you coaches maybe who have aspirations of being a tour coach. And I like the idea of having a suite of coaches that we're comfortable working with. I know we're more than happy to bounce stuff off each other, and there's, believe it or not, folks, there's no egos here. Where if one of us has got a question, the question gets asked and gets answered by whoever's here or the other coaches that we talk to on a regular basis. And we do talk on a regular basis because sharing knowledge and different perspectives, that's where growth will come from. And I think that it's every coach should be looking for that stable and always adding to that stable. And I personally seek out coaches who have very different perspectives to me at times, because that has really generated a new way of looking at things for me, or maybe opened my mind to other possibilities. And that, to me, as a coach, is a very healthy thing. Would you agree, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's coaches out there who love to interact with other coaches, and there's coaches who don't. You got the territorial types, and I've experienced both types, and I've learned a ton from other coaches. And every time I see another coach teach or talk, I pick up something. There's no question about that. You need to do that.
Yeah. Yep. I've definitely been stabbed in the back by coaches.
We've all been stabbed by a few.
That were in my center of trust, and they ended up stabbing and stealing players and
They're
doing
no longer in your circle.
Yeah, but that's human nature. You get all kinds. But the key is, again, for me as a coach, my sole purpose is to help the player. It is, and the only way I can do that is getting the right voices and the right people in front of them to get where they need to go. So, don't be scared. You're gonna get the short end of the stick on occasion. That's human nature. But just understand, when you keep kind of filtering your way through and understand this, to become a tour coach, that's a lot of it. And we won't even talk about travel and the insecurities of tour players and what that all means for you and your psyche as you move forward as a tour coach. But that gives you at least a good understanding of a tour coach and what that kind of looks like. Anyone want to wrap this up before we move on to a new question?
Nope, I think you wrapped it.
Careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish
Yes.
for. All right. I guess another question we have is, I think a lot of times, and I see this a lot with newer coaches, is where is that line between the holistic teaching a player and having all the gizmos and electronics and the super knowledge and all this stuff? How do we mesh that as an industry, and how can we get the best out of the player, but again, not be, I guess, so technique oriented that's going to solve the performance gap? And we'll go with our performance specialist, Gareth, to cover that one off.
Teed up beautifully here by Mr. Bailey. He's just knocked it out of the park. You know what? If you put that to me, Brian, there's one word that I think is not. I don't hear enough about it in coaching. I don't hear enough about it in coaching circles. I don't see enough of it online, and that is the word autonomy. The players who are coming to us have to be given choices versus being told what to do. And if you've got a box spewing data, and that data will be probably highly accurate, and you have a teacher telling you what to do, you're not learning holistically. You are literally being told what to do. But the minute that a teacher and a box removes choice, they're actually putting you in handcuffs. You will probably get worse as a player. You may show some improvement in data, but your performances will not. You won't feel in control because you, again, let's go back to that word, autonomy and choice. So I think when we coach them, if people ever wanted to watch me coach, you'll see me giving the player choices in terms of how we go about achieving certain things. Those things will move the technology and the data, the technological data in the background, but the player won't be getting access to that. I will be keeping it and a quiet eye on it. When players work with me on a launch monitor, there will never be 42 numbers up on the screen. They will probably get to see the shot tracer and the shot tracer alone. I can look at the data if I feel I need to, and then the player will be given a suite of options. And because on a golf course, we're emotional human beings, and some days we feel great about our game, other days we don't, and we need to in those moments, to feel in control, we need to have the ability to make choices that can alter the performances that we're delivering and maybe get ourselves into a better place or back on track. So yes, tech has its place, but it's not the place that I think the industry has led. The consumer, But to think that it is, we should not be reliant on something in practice that we don't have access to in play. So that to me is, if you want to take one thing from that, if you are training with something that you become a little bit reliant on or you need to see during practice, then it's actually going to hurt you when you're playing golf.
Mark?
Well, I'm famous for having very little technology, which I think at times has hurt me as a coach, because I think people expect you to have a lot of technology, especially that's the way the kind of industry has gone. But I found that a lot of the things that you can tell from a player, you don't really need the technology to tell you they're starting the ball left. You know what I mean? You're starting the ball left, you aim right. Okay, I don't need a gadget to tell me that you're doing that. There's certainly some things I can't maybe see with my naked eye. But, from a putting perspective only and not from full swing perspective, the technology out there tends to be a very sterile environment where you're on flat surfaces and 10-foot putts and there's no slope under your feet and not real grass, and may or may not be not real grass, and it doesn't translate well into real putting. So there's people who have amazing strokes on the Sam Putt Lab who make nothing. And we've seen that. I've been seeing that for 20 years. People talk about it, where players will come and say, but my SAM numbers are so good, but I'm not making anything.
So you're saying technique doesn't guarantee performance?
Technique does not guarantee performance at all. So, yeah. And a lot of the things that you'll pick up with the technology is really kind of icing on the cake, where they have fundamental problems that are bigger. For instance, your reads are all wrong. Okay, that's a fundamentally big problem. Or you fundamentally can't control speed, whereas on a Sam Putt Lab, it might say, well, your launch angle is 1 degree too high or 1 degree too low. Well, that's probably not causing you to miss all the putts you're missing. So I think people get, buried in the weeds pretty quick, and they like to see their reports, and they like to see good numbers on that to give themselves maybe self-confidence that their stroke is good. But when you watch them putt, it's pretty clear. You can watch somebody hit 3 to 5 putts and know what their issues are, most of the time. So I tend to not use much of it all. I have had problems in the past where I've used some stroke monitors, and the numbers were wrong. Either it wasn't calibrated right, or the calculations weren't quite right, and it was giving you feedback that made no sense whatsoever and was really confusing the player. And then the player kind of freaked out about it. And then you spent a week trying to unfreak them out about what the device was telling them.
Yeah, I had a story about coaching group and bringing a coach in on full swing, and then this coach decided to become a putting coach all at the same time. And so I had a player that we had learned, we worked, and we're doing everything off of performance. We're hitting our numbers. So not a lot's being said in training because there's not a lot to be said because they're performing. And this coach started behind my back, started talking about techniques, pieces, and all that. Then all of a sudden I get a letter saying, you are no longer my coach because you're not giving me enough in training. Which was, I'm just sitting there going, interesting.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, needless to say, they left tour 6 months later.
They were off tour.
Not that I wasn't
they
happy.
Trained themselves off
not
tour.
Not that I wasn't happy, but I was not happy. Yeah. So again, it's what you've come to, and if you want to be a coach, I think it comes back to what does that mean? You are managing players. You're just not managing face angle or angle of attack, or you're managing a player, a being, and trying to get them to a new level of performance. And you have to think differently other than just technique as the golden arrow, because that's a piece. We need technique, and it's got to be reliable and something that they can call upon. However, we're hitting off of hanging lies and depends that don't really access what we're trying to do, and we're trying to override an entire system to hit a shot really close to achieve something. That is not taught inside of a hitting bay, inside of a garage, or a driving range with a box behind them. So again, that variability and teaching the player to achieve differently, achieve without technique per se as a focus, will behoove you as a coach and get your player better. Behoove, do you like that?
That's a big word. You've been in Europe a long time now. You start using big words.
Gareth, we'll let you finish out here on performance.
I think that word was brought to you by whiskey.
That is my favorite.
One of my very expensive bottles of whiskey.
Single malts.
Just on this and what we're all chatting about here, one of the phenomena I'm seeing time and again, week in, week out, is players manipulating to numbers where, the data that they're seeing, the feedback they're getting from whatever device they're utilizing isn't what they believe to be the perfect numbers, or maybe the data itself is telling them it's not in the feedback they're getting. And so they start to make manipulation to numbers, but what that means is they're not really developing, they're not learning. It's ad hoc, it's not retainable, they don't control it or own it when they get in the golf course. And if you, to Brian's point, if you're not able to be adaptive in a real-time live environment, then you're not actually learning to play the game of golf. You maybe are learning to hit perfect numbers on a system, but that is a very different thing to playing the game itself. It's one thing to go up against a punch bag, it's a whole other thing to get punched in the nose. And the golf course is going to punch you in the nose, right? Yeah. So you've got to be expecting to get hit back, and you've got to be therefore able to be adaptive in that moment, and therefore your training needs to definitely reflect that. So if people need a bit of, to Mark's point, to get a bit of self-confidence from seeing, my stroke data is better, fine, but you better then go off-piste and train some other ways that would be much more relevant to what you're going to experience in the golf course. And, let's get some wind going here and get some different environments, different green speeds, all of those different slopes, all those different elements that will be actually genuine preparation for competitive golf or performing versus white coat syndrome, go into the sterile environment. You'll produce something maybe, or you'll manipulate to something, but I don't believe that will be sustained. All the data tells me it won't be when I look at human performance in neuroscience, and it suggests the opposite, that most experts have several ways of executing what looks like an identical result. So the shot will look the same, but the player would be executing it in different ways, not necessarily consciously, but the muscle activation or the sequencing will be slightly different, and yet the result looks the same. I don't think that's spoken about enough in our game at all. I think everything's about, if you train it enough, it'll become like you're almost a robot. No two movement patterns can be identical, and therefore we should be training in different ways, in my humble opinion.
Very good. Wow, we're about 30 minutes in right now, and we haven't really even gone through any of the questions that we wrote down, so that's exciting.
Where's your pad?
Well, it's under my.
Yeah, we wrote down.
It's all up here. Iron trap, and then as the older I get, the iron trap
more
leaks.
like an iron grate.
But we're getting ready to do some cultural attacheing throughout Dublin today.
Another big word.
Basically, we're getting ready to go on a pub crawl. So we'll go and close this out. Mark, anything you want to hit with these coaches out there that are all super, super great people that just want to be tour coaches and how to guide them to the future?
My advice is always the same to all of them, is just get your fundamentals good with players. Keep it simple. Get their performance better. Not their charts better, but get their performance better. Fundamentals. Nothing super fancy.
Gareth McShay?
Yeah, I mean, what Mark's just said rings true. And I think one of the things you got to do to be a great coach, you got to watch the player. And when you talk to a player, you will see physiological, can you say that word for me, Brian? The big
Physiological.
Word? Physiological reactions. And if you're making a highly technical suggestion, you'll probably see a facial expression or just a body tightening, which is telling you, I don't like this. And you've got to become a very good reader of that, and experience is critical to that. So you can see the effect of your suggestions, and you might need to phrase something differently, make it much simpler. Like if you're performing at the very highest level, you better have simple things in your mind, not highly technical instruction or how-to instruction. So yeah, fundamentals, and the player's got to understand that what's highly technical today will probably break down tomorrow. There's more points of failure, so simplicity is the recipe to success.
Yeah, I like all those, and I would encourage you to go watch some of the old guys teach. Yes, like
us
guys.
We're getting close. Yeah, I'm still 5-6 years away. But finding the guys that have been around for a long time and watch how they speak with players, watch how they carry themselves, watch what information is shared and how they share it. Again, it's just not a wiki link document dump, or then all of a sudden I'm just going to dump all this. Like it is sharing information. It is moving to a desired goal. But again, we as humans can only manage so much in a lesson. We can only give them so much in a short amount of time that they can actually take with them and kind of keep building upon. So if we, as coaches, do a bad job there, we are letting our player down immediately. We're putting them in a position where they're not going to succeed, where they won't get better, and that's on us. So I think finding older coaches, guys and gals that have been doing it without all this technology and have been moving players, getting players better, that's valuable stuff. Don't forget about them. And yes, I'm slowly but surely moving into that group. But, you know, for me as a young coach, the best thing I can say is just get some mentors. Find a coach or two that will take you in, that you can bounce ideas off of, watch them teach, see how they do it different. And I guarantee you, if you go watch a bunch of people teach, you will start to take bits and pieces of that and insert it into your teaching, which will only make you a better coach. So I hope that was helpful for all you. From this point forward, we'll see you later, and Guinness to everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cilantro.
That works.
I was going to say cilantro.
Cilantro.
Double cheers me.
You could have thrown the... You could
I'll
have
throw the cilantro in.
This has been a Fuel production.